The ballroom was built to impress visiting dignitaries and to reassure ordinary workers that someone important had their oxygen bills in mind. Amber chandeliers, really methane-safe light towers disguised as crystal, threw honey-colored brilliance across a floor that thrummed ever so slightly with the flagship's reactor. Servers wove through the crowd with etched cups fogging at the rim, and every conversation seemed pitched half a decibel too high, like people were shouting over a storm that hadn't arrived yet. I stood near a ventilation pillar pretending to monitor airflow, which wasn't entirely pretending. When you've watched a pressure gasket lie to you and take a life you loved with it, you don't stop listening to the ship's breath. You never do. Consider it a wedding gift, Governor Havel announced, broad smile, arms open as if unveiling a statue. Our Titan sends Her Grace a partner of the most practical kind. Chief Systems Engineer Elias Cole. Laughter rolled, polite and mean in the same wave. The sort of laughter that leaves fingerprints you can feel for days. Queen Soriel did not laugh. She was seated, not because she could not stand, but because the chair had clearly been designed to honor weight and poise like a throne that remembered work. Chains of hammered silver lay across her collarbones and caught the orange light in soft, human warmth. In person she had a steadiness that made the rest of us seem undercooked. House Verrett requires partners, not property, she said, voice level enough to lower the tide. The governor's smile held. He was good at smiles that held. Touched the wrist display that mapped the ballroom's microclimate. A hair of dry here, a pocket of cold there, the quiet, constant inhale-exhale tick of a ship that had to keep breathing even while people made jokes. I was very aware of the half-moon scar under the edge of my shirt sleeve, the one you can only get from bracing a pipe with your body because you trust your hands more than a failing clamp. People congratulated me. I nodded like a machine. The blast took a second to be understood as a blast. The floor kicked like a mule. Crystal chimed in panic. The chandeliers flickered and came back. You learn, after any real emergency, to tell the difference between noise and damage. That was damage. The med deck, judging by the way the sound slid. My feet were already moving when a junior officer pointed the way. Governor Havel shouted something about staying put for safety. The Queen ignored him and was somehow at my shoulder by the time the lift doors opened. Meddeck was a slice of clean white stabbed through with red alarms and a smell like hot metal and sterile gauze. A pressure feed in the recovery bay had ruptured along a hairline seam. A hiss like a snake under a quilt came from behind a bank of diagnostic glass. I don't remember drawing breath. I remember seeing a weighted clamp skitter under a cart and diving for it. I remember shouldering into a gap that wasn't meant for shoulders. I remember the weight of a line in my hands. The way a ship's pulse moves through your palms when you're the thing keeping it together. Queen Soriel had been caught by a buckled support strut, not crushed, but cut deep along the ribs. Her escort surrounded her like a shield of concern, but her eyes never left the room's motion. She kept the medics from running, which sounds small until you've seen a team panic. "Report," she said to the doctor whose hands shook around a sealed injector. "Pressure stable in here if the patch holds," I said before the doctor could answer, voice too bright, too calm. "That line feeds triage 4. I can clamp it, but the Med AI flagged a blood loss cascade." "The AI flagged a choice," she said, looking at my arm, at the portable transfuser already slick with someone's previous emergency. "Will you make it?" The doctor swallowed. "Variation markers. There's a risk of catalytic interaction under transfusion stress." "My queen, we need processed." "Processed won't arrive in time," I said, because the ship's breath told me that truth and I don't argue with oxygen. "Use me." The Med AI read our BIOS and spat a recommendation that felt like an accusation. Compatible enough, risky enough, urgent enough. I signed with a thumbprint. The needle went in and the world narrowed to the hissing seam and the steadying numbers on the wall, to the weight of her gaze on me as if I were a gauge she trusted, to the gloved hands of a medic stitching a wound while the Queen breathed measured and precise. I thought of Mara, of the day her sensor lied and the gasket failed and the form I filled out afterward that used the word incident like it wasn't a life. I thought of the way I'd sworn never to be surprised by a ship again. I held the line until the flex of it felt like a heartbeat and then like my own hands. The patch took. The alarms stepped down from scream to conversation. The doctor said, in a voice like he was walking out onto thin ice, "Stabilized." Then the other numbers started cascading, the ones the Varation Med AI kept siloed from non-royal eyes. Palace medics arrived in a flock of steel-gray uniforms, and their faces went through relief and landed on something like awe. "Conception marker," one whispered. "Catalyst alignment." Someone turned the volume down on the whole world. "Define conception," I said, because words have meanings and I needed the right one. "Not the way you think," the chief palace medic said carefully. Varation gestation sometimes initiates under catalytic conditions if a rare alignment exists. It is biological, not intimate. A receptor chain triggered by the donor's blood markers under duress. He looked like he hated the sound of his own explanation. "It happens once in a century, or not at all." Governor Havel appeared at the doors, face arranged in concern. Security sealed the med suite sighting protocol. Forced proximity had a bureaucracy behind it. The Queen watched the medic, then watched me, then looked at the door. She weighed a lot of things in the span of a breath. "If this leaves this room without my consent," she said, voice low enough to be private but full enough to carry, "I become leverage and you, Chief Cole, become a headline they'll use to sell air." She turned to me fully. "Do you understand the difference between privacy and secrecy?" "I do," I said, and reached past the med console to pop a maintenance panel only I was supposed to touch. "I also understand the difference between a camera and a leak. Two toggles, one coded key. One old habit acquired after years of watching accidents turn into gossip." The suite's lenses went dead. The med AI recorded locally behind a new encryption key. "My key." The Queen regarded the panel, then me. "You choose discretion over credit." "I choose dignity over spectacle," I said. "Especially yours. Especially now." Somewhere behind her poise I saw something give and reform into respect. It wasn't a smile. It was the attention you give a tool you didn't expect to need and now can't imagine working without. Outside, the governor demanded a statement. Inside, the doctor adjusted the transfuser and asked me to keep still. The algorithm wanted one more cycle. "You will remain," the Queen said quietly, "until we understand the parameters." Her hand hovered near the call light, not touching it. "You bled for me. In my house, we guard what guards us." "I'm not a pawn," I said, a reflex more than a defense. "Nor am I a prize," she returned, and it might have been humor if her eyes weren't still reading the room as if it were a map of a battlefield. The auxiliary thrusters nudged our orbit, a gentle sway that made the ceiling fixtures ring like distant glass. The Med AI printed a string of probabilities and a warning about disclosure risk. The palace medics conferred in a tight knot that radiated competence and fear in equal measure. I sat on the edge of the bed because there wasn't anywhere else to sit, and the Queen shifted to give me more room without comment. Her presence had mass and grace, like a planet that knows it turns. "You've done this before," she said, not a question. "Not this," I said, meaning the catalytic miracle, the political minefield, the way my heart felt like it had been repurposed into a component. "But the other thing, the patch with your body, the listening. Listening to a ship is an art they don't teach in court." She considered the ceiling, the light, the way the copper trim caught it. "In court they teach how to be watched." Palace aide knocked, a quick triplet. "My Queen." He sounded young and frightened in the way people get when they realize history is happening to them at close range. "The governor insists." "The governor can insist in writing," she said, not raising her voice. The aide whispered apologies to the door and retreated like sound down a drain. I realized I had been holding my hands taut, as if the line were still under them. I let them unclench. "We should tell your house, on your terms, before anyone else frames it." "We will," she said, "after I decide whose terms those are." She turned her full attention on me again. "You understand why you cannot leave. Not until we are certain. Not until I've decided how to protect what your choice might have started." I nodded. The Med AI chirped its agreement as if it had rights. "Then I suppose I'm your patient," I said, and meant it more ways than one. Something slid under the door with a soft scrape, like a letter in an old movie. The Queen's nearest aide stooped to pick it up and froze halfway. Reading the top line before his training pulled his face back into neutrality. He passed it to Soriel. She did not touch the paper with her fingers. She used a stylus to pull it farther onto the bedspread between us. Black print on gray. A corporate letterhead that didn't bother with seals or flourishes because money is its own emblem. For words in the center, with a number and a timestamp below. Cryodyne has footage. Offer pending. Rumors move faster than gravity on a ship that size. By the time Titan's dawn turned the methane clouds outside to pale gold, everyone from the cafeteria cooks to the navigation crew had a version of the story. Some swore I'd married the Queen in secret. Others claimed she'd eaten my heart for ritual strength. The reality, that a 1 in a billion catalytic transfusion had turned a maintenance emergency into a diplomatic incident, was too complicated for gossip. So it turned itself into theater. The governor called it a courtesy engagement. The rest of us called it what it was. A staged photo op designed to prove everyone was fine and no scandals existed. The Queen's chamber attendants dressed her in the ceremonial travel silks of House Verret, woven carbon threads that shimmered between violet and blue, light catching on the patterns like oil on water. Even confined to a palanquin meant for low gravity, she radiated an immovable grace, her expression calm in the way cliffs are calm. I walked a half step behind, wearing a patched uniform jacket with the wrong insignia because the correct one had burned off in the blast. Suited me. The concourse smelled of yeast and machine oil. Cryodyne's executives waited near the cafeteria entrance with smiles that looked practiced in mirrors. Her Grace, drawled Rel, the one with the perfectly ironed lapels and the eyes of someone who's already bought the answer to his question. We were concerned about the medical irregularities last night. The ship's sensors detected a blackout. Cameras disabled. How curious. That word again, curious, used like a blade. A few press drones blinked red recording lights. The governor hovered nearby, pretending to referee. The crowd leaned in, the way crowds do when they smell scandal but pretend to smell celebration. Soriel's jaw lifted by a precise degree. A malfunction was corrected, she said evenly. The engineer responsible is here. You may thank him for keeping your air breathable. I inclined my head, more to the room than to Rel. Sensor error in the meddeck grid, I said, plain as pipework. We're running integrity checks now. Then, before he could ask for data I wasn't going to give, a tray crashed somewhere behind the buffet line. Metal and porcelain, sharp enough to make every head turn. A kid, 10, maybe 12, stood frozen, eyes wide as shattered dishes spun across the floor. I moved on instinct, one knee down, one hand out, catching a cup before it hit the deck. The crowd's tension shifted. People exhaled. Easy, I said to the child, voice pitched for repair manuals, not audiences. Let's fix this instead of feeding it. I stacked the cups, slid them onto the tray, and, while crouched, reached up to the vent above the serving line. A soft vibration hummed, an unbalanced fan blade. I thumbed the housing, pressed twice, and the rattle stopped. A wave of quiet followed, subtle but real, like a pain you'd forgotten you were carrying suddenly gone. The child blinked, grinned, and scampered off. Laughter, not cruel this time, broke through the crowd. Soriel watched, eyes warm for half a second before returning to regal stillness. Rel's smile tightened to the width of a credit slip. Efficient, he said. Perhaps you should join Cryodyne. We reward initiative. I already have oxygen, I said, and the governor coughed to cover a chuckle that wasn't entirely supportive. The walk continued through the cafeteria. Cameras captured Soriel thanking staff, inspecting vents, asking miners about rations. To the outside eye, it looked like calm governance. Underneath, it was a duel. Every word was a deflection, every smile an act of self-defense. Back in lockdown, the med-suite door sealed with its usual hiss. The Queen dropped the public mask like a helmet removed after battle. They're circling, she said, eyes on the feed from the outer corridor. House Verret's rivals will turn this into spectacle before sundown. Spectacle's easier to sell than policy, I said, running diagnostics on my wrist pad. But facts survive better than gossip. We just have to keep them ours for now. The Med AI displayed the catalyst report again. Helix diagrams glowing amber, probability scrolling down like an unsent prayer. Variation biology read pregnancy not as seed and womb but as chemical harmony. Two compatible life codes accidentally resonating until one built upon the other. My blood, her receptors, one impossible sequence. No intimacy required, only survival. Still, it made for irresistible scandal. If this marker leaks, I said, they'll call it divine or depraved depending on who's paying. Her eyes softened at that. And you? How do you call it? An accident that saved your life, I said, and meant it. But not one we owe explanations for. She looked at me for a long beat, then turned toward the viewport. Titan's haze glowed orange beneath us. My body, she said finally, has always been someone else's argument. Too much of me for beauty, too little compliance for tradition. They call me queen when they need gravity and burden when they want lightness. I didn't know what to do with that truth except honor it. Your presence stabilized a corridor in a panic, I said. That's not a burden. That's ballast. Ships don't fly without it. A ghost of a smile. You make mechanics sound like poetry. Maybe mechanics is the only honest poetry we have left. She almost laughed, a sound like a pressure valve sighing. Tell me, Chief Cole, do you always mend what you didn't break? Only when leaving it broken would cost someone else air, I said. That earned a look. Not romantic, not yet, but curious in a way that felt heavier than flirtation. Later, while the medics cycled equipment, I pulled the bent scrap of metal a dockhand had slipped me during the cafeteria walkthrough. It looked ordinary until my handheld analyzer hummed low and displayed the alloy signature. Cryodyne composite, not colony stock. A match to the debris from the blast site. You were right, I told her, showing the readout. They didn't just profit from chaos. They built it. Her voice cooled. Then our next courtesy is a hearing. She moved to the console, opening the day's schedule. 2 hours from now, the governor will call it a procedural review. In truth, it's an ambush. I nodded, already tracing contingency plans. We'll need evidence presented cleanly, publicly. No conjecture. You'll speak, she said, already assuming I'd agree. I'm not trained for politics. You're trained for pressure, she said simply. That's close enough. I spent the next hour writing an encryption patch that sealed her medical files behind a key only I could unlock. The code pulsed steady on my wrist display like a heartbeat. If this fails, I said, I'm the only leak. She watched me work, eyes unreadable. That's reckless. That's loyalty, I said. There's a difference. Loyalty, she murmured, is the most dangerous kind of competence. Then softer. Thank you. The ship adjusted orbit. Amber light pooled across the room, catching in the filigree of her armor seams. For a moment, she looked like the idea of sovereignty made flesh, weighty, radiant, impossible. When the call from the governor came through, she listened, said almost nothing, and then turned off the link. He insists on a public statement after the hearing, she said. He'll expect contrition. I'd suggest oxygen over contrition, I said, tightening the last strap on her ceremonial pressure harness. She glanced down at my hands as I worked, then met my eyes. You dress me for battle, she said. I fix things, I answered. Today that happens to be you. That pulled a low laugh out of her, warm enough to make the sterile air feel breathable again. The medics filed out, leaving us with silence and the low hum of filtered air. My wrist display pinged with a system alert. Unauthorized personnel approaching. The security feed flickered. Instead of the governor's uniformed guard, 4 men in cryodyne gray filled the frame. Rifles slung low, faces blank with corporate calm. Soriel's tone didn't change. They mean to escort me. They mean to own you, I said and stood. The bed sensor beeped protest at the sudden motion. The intercom buzzed. For Her Grace's protection, one of the guards intoned. Transfer to Cryodyne's medical wing per executive order. Soriel tilted her head toward me, a silent question. I shook mine once. The lead guard repeated the order. She didn't answer. The panel light above the door shifted from blue to warning red. Someone outside swiped an override key. The queen straightened, silks whispering like the prelude to thunder. "Then let us see," she said quietly. "Whose protection costs more?" The door bolts disengaged with a hydraulic sigh. I felt my pulse match the sound. If she gave me one word, I could seal the hatch again from my side. But that would start a war in the corridor. If she didn't, Cryodyne would walk her into custody and call it compliance. Between those two truths, a heartbeat's width of choice hung open like an airlock. She looked at me, then at the doorway where the first gray uniform shadowed the threshold, and said, in a voice as calm as vacuum, "Chief Cole, stay close." I did, and as the lock light flashed green, I realized that was the only order I had wanted since the moment the world exploded. The moment the lock light turned green, every instinct in my body lined up behind one word: move. The Cryodyne guards entered in practiced formation, for across, helmets reflecting the suite's amber glow. Their insignias were muted, the way corporations like to mark property while pretending it was professionalism. The lead officer spoke through a helmet filter. "For Her Grace's safety. Executive Directive 909. Please comply." Soriel didn't flinch. She stood, tall as gravity, voice even. "Cryodyne does not issue executive directives to a sovereign house. Temporary jurisdiction," the guard countered. "Pending investigation into the sabotage." His tone was too smooth. He was reading from a script. I stepped forward, slow, calm, palms open. "If it's an investigation, you'll need environmental clearance. You start pulling her through untested corridors, you risk contamination. That's not protocol, it's negligence." He hesitated a second too long. Soriel filled the silence. "You heard the engineer." She turned her gaze on me. "Chief Cole, would you escort us to Cryodyne's shuttle bay? I assume your maintenance routes are more reliable than theirs." That wasn't permission, it was strategy. She had turned an arrest into a tour. We stepped into the corridor with the guards flanking us. The flagship's pressure lights flickered low, shadows overlapping in metallic gold. Every sound felt amplified. Boots striking deck, filtered breathing, the thrum of coolant pumps underfoot. The ship moved through Titan's upper atmosphere, amber lightning faintly flashing through the external viewports like heartbeats. Halfway down the spine corridor, the lights stuttered. A soft pulse in my wrist display, power fluctuations not random. Someone was hijacking the diagnostic grid. "They're triggering sensor noise," I murmured. "What does that mean?" one of the guards asked, tension slipping into his voice. "It means you're about to panic," I said. Then the lights died. An alarm wailed, the sound of pressurization failure, a shriek that cuts bone deep. The guards froze, instinctively slamming their visors shut. I heard Soriel's voice steady as stone. "Crew to stations. Maintain posture. Breathe." The ship shuddered as Titan's methane storm hit the hull. I could feel the vibration like a heartbeat under my boots. "They're spoofing a breach," I said, already moving toward the wall panel. "If that alarm's real, we'd be choking. It's a feed hijack." One guard raised his rifle. "Step back." I didn't. "You want us to suffocate in bureaucracy? Or you want me to stop your ship from screaming?" The officer hesitated, and Soriel made the decision for him. "Let him work." I popped the panel, wires glowing faint blue under emergency light. The injector was small, cheap, wedged into the ship sensor relay like a parasite. "Corporate sabotage," I muttered. "Classic Cryodyne trick. Panic everyone, then swoop in to offer solutions." A spark jumped as I twisted the injector loose. The alarm choked, coughed, and fell silent. For one blessed second, the only sound was breathing, mine, the guards, and the Queen's, steady and deliberate. The lights flickered back to half power. The guards looked disoriented, as though they'd surfaced from underwater. "Status?" she asked. "False breach neutralized," I said. "But that injector's still broadcasting. Whoever installed it knows we're alive." Another tremor shook the floor, this time not simulated. A real breach hissed somewhere below. A high, thin sound. That's not in the script, I said. We followed it to the auxiliary bulkhead near cargo deck 7. A hairline crack ran along the seam where two panels met, exhaling a whisper of amber vapor. It shimmered like fog in the low light. One of the guards muttered a prayer. Soriel moved forward before I could stop her. Fall back, I said, reaching for the patch foam in my kit. She ignored me. Her frame, broad, strong, every motion deliberate, blocked the trickle. There are civilians behind this wall, she said. You'll seal it faster if I shield the leak. Your Highness. Do it, Chief. Her tone left no space for protest. I hit the sealant release, coating the crack with foam. It hissed, hardened, and the hiss of the leak faded. I peeled off the insulation glove and checked the meter, pressure stabilized. When I looked up, she was still standing there, shoulders squared, calm as gravity. The vapor had left frost crystals on the edge of her armor, glinting faintly. She looked at me, not smiling but softened somehow. You chose the people behind this wall instead of evidence. Fix people first, I said. Blame later. She inclined her head. Then perhaps we share a faith, Chief Cole. Governance, like engineering, is maintenance work no one applauds unless it fails. For a moment, everything felt suspended. The hum of the hull, the faint amber light haloing her silhouette, the breath we shared in that cold corridor. I'd seen beauty before, the kind that comes with symmetry. This was different. This was competence made visible. We made our way back through the dark, following the emergency lights. In the near silence, I could hear faint sobs. Two engineers trapped behind a closed service hatch, pounding for help. The guards moved to cut the lock, but Soriel raised a hand. Chief, your tools. I crouched, worked the manual override. The lock popped. Two crew members stumbled out, eyes wide, cheeks wet with condensation and fear. Breach? Is it real? It was, I said. It isn't now. They both looked at the Queen, uncertain whether to bow or thank her. She ended the debate. Thank your engineer, she said. He's the reason you're breathing. When we returned to the suite, the air felt heavier, thick with more than oxygen. The cryodyne guards lingered awkwardly at the door. We're to escort you to the hearing chamber, their leader said. Immediate attendance required. Soriel dismissed them with a single nod. We'll attend. Alone. Her voice had the kind of finality that made even corporations blink. The guards hesitated, then retreated. Inside, I placed the recovered injector on the desk. She examined it, tracing the serial code with a stylus. Their arrogance is their weakness, she murmured. They never imagine we'll read their language. Or use it against them, I said, opening a diagnostic window. This model pings a maintenance server before each broadcast. We can trace it back to Cryodyne's control grid. Her brows rose slightly. Can you prove that in front of witnesses? I can make it sing in their frequency, I said, already reprogramming the core. When they lie, I'll let their own tech contradict them. She watched in silence as I worked, the faint tap of my stylus echoing in the sealed room. After a while, she said quietly, You lost someone once. I can hear it when you work. I didn't look up. My wife. 2 years ago. A sensor failed in a storm drill. The report said human error. I signed the paperwork myself because someone had to. So yes, I listen harder than I used to. I'm sorry, she said simply. No ceremony. Just truth. Truth's heavy enough without ceremony, I said. But thank you. She nodded slowly, then set down her stylus. You should know mine as well. My house sent me here to sign a treaty I cannot respect. They would rather I return shamed than successful. They say my body makes me unfit for diplomacy. I tell them diplomacy is surviving scrutiny with purpose intact. That's a definition I can work with. For the first time, she laughed. A low, warm sound that rolled like distant thunder. You're inconveniently likable, Chief Cole. Occupational hazard. A soft chime interrupted us, her console flashing a priority signal. She read the incoming message, face tightening. The hearing has been advanced. 1 hour. I stood. We'll be ready. We? She asked, an edge of amusement under the fatigue. Your Grace, I said. You need someone who can make a ship's system talk, and I've already been volunteered. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing in thoughtful approval. Then let us make the truth audible. I packed the injector into a containment case, ran one last diagnostic on the encryption seal guarding her medical files, and transferred everything to a portable drive key to my blood signature. She watched each step, saying nothing until I was done. You trust technology more than people, she observed. Machines don't lie on purpose, I said, and yet they fail. So do people. But sometimes, she said softly, they repair each other. The lights flickered again. A distant thud rolled through the deck plates. Another atmospheric wave or something worse. She stood, reaching for her ceremonial cloak. Our hearing, she said, will double as their trial. Her voice carried weight but also calm resolve. I realized she wasn't afraid of the political storm outside. She was only deciding how best to steer through it. We moved toward the door. She stopped at the threshold, turned slightly. You should know, she said. House Verret will recall me if I speak against Cryodyne publicly. My own kin would rather silence the scandal than prove my strength. You'd lose your crown. Perhaps, she said, but crowns are lighter than conscience. We stepped into the corridor again. The amber lights had dimmed to emergency mode, shadows pooling in the corners. If we're walking into an ambush, I said, we'll need proof visible to everyone. You'll have it, she said. You're carrying it. I blinked. The drive? It's encrypted. Not that, she said. You, the engineer who bled for a queen and kept quiet when noise would have made him famous. You're evidence enough. For once, I didn't have an answer. The sound of the ship filled the silence between us. Steady, alive, waiting. I adjusted the containment case under my arm and fell into step beside her. Ahead, the corridor widened toward the hearing chamber, a funnel of light and politics waiting to devour us both. Somewhere in my wrist display, a new message blinked. An incoming transfer request from Cryodyne HR. I didn't open it, but I saw the header line clear enough. Promotion. Relocation. Full benefits. Immediate effect. They thought everyone had a price. Maybe they were right. Or maybe, for the first time in years, I'd found something worth more than safety. The Queen glanced at me as the doors ahead opened. Ready, Chief, I exhaled. Always. We stepped through into the light, shoulder to shoulder, two people bound by accident and choice, walking straight into the storm we both knew was waiting. The hearing chamber was a glass amphitheater suspended above Titan's orange clouds, all gleam and pressure and performance. Every sound carried. The murmur of ministers, the soft scrape of camera drones circling like silver insects. I'd worked on enough oxygen scrubbers to know when a room was designed to make people sweat. The governor sat at the center dais with that politician's half-smile, one eye on the cameras, one on the Queen. Cryodyne's Rel occupied a front-row seat, sleek in corporate gray, his personal data lens hovering just behind his ear. When we entered, the audience hushed as if the air itself thinned to make room for scandal. Soriel walked beside me, regal, unhurried. The silks she wore weren't decorative. Each thread was filament carbon, enough strength to stop a knife, but light enough to move like water. Her armor was diplomacy woven literal. I followed half a pace behind, carrying the sealed case with the signal injector. My badge had been revoked 3 hours earlier by automated oversight, but I still had the same tools in my pockets. You can't take competence away with paperwork. The governor struck his gavel against the translucent desk. This hearing is convened to clarify the circumstances of the medical event aboard this vessel and the subsequent breach of security. We thank House Verret for its cooperation and Chief Cole for his inadvertent involvement. The pause before inadvertent was almost art. Rel smiled with the patience of a man already writing the press release. Her Grace's health is our foremost concern. Cryodyne regrets that safety systems appear to have failed. We are, however, troubled by reports that an unauthorized transfusion occurred, compromising both medical integrity and, shall we say, biological protocols. His voice wrapped insult in velvet. The audience murmured. Soriel didn't blink. "A human saved my life," she said. "You may quote that accurately." Laughter rippled, real, surprised. She let it settle before continuing. "Chief Cole acted within emergency regulation and within decency. You will find those harder to compromise than your hardware." Rel's smile thinned. "Perhaps you would prefer to show us your proof, Your Grace." She nodded toward me. I stepped forward, connecting my pad to the chamber's hollow grid. The injector floated above us in three-dimensional light, its signature ping cycling, its firmware log unspooling like a confession. "This device was found spliced into the Meddex alarm bus," I said. "It broadcast false breach data to force an evacuation. Standard cryodyne manufacturing alloy. Embedded handshake pinged a private maintenance server registered under your name, Executive Rel." Rel's composure wavered, just slightly. "Preposterous. Anyone could forge that." "Not with your encryption key," I said. "You recycled it 2 months ago when you filed a cost report on port supplies. Sloppy accounting saves lives sometimes." Soriel's lips curved in the smallest echo of approval. "Our engineer's point," she said to the crowd, "is that sabotage wears many uniforms, and this one is corporate gray." Rel leaned back, unfazed. "Accusations without context are unkind, Your Grace, especially given your unique medical condition." A beat of silence. The governor raised an eyebrow. "Condition?" And then Rel sprung the trap. The wall screens flashed to life. Cryodyne's PR team had preloaded them. A single phrase pulsed across every display. "Conception marker detected." Below it, a still frame from the med suite. Me, blood-soaked, kneeling beside the Queen's bed, her hand on my wrist. The image stripped of truth and built for sensation. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Someone hissed, "Human father?" Soriel's shoulders stayed squared. "That is a biological misunderstanding," she said evenly. "A catalytic response triggered during a life-saving transfusion. No intimacy, no scandal, only science. And gratitude." She stepped closer to the podium, eyes sweeping the room. "Do not mistake curiosity for right. My house's genetics are not your entertainment." Her calm worked like gravity. Murmurs dimmed. I could see Rel recalibrating his smirk, trying to find footing in moral outrage. He never got the chance. The hollow still above us flickered, my doing this time. I had keyed the injector's live feed into the public net. A second set of numbers scrolled alongside the words, "Conception marker." Maintenance server IDs. Proof of Rel's link. The audience leaned forward. The pattern was unmistakable. Rel hissed under his breath. "You're making enemies you can't afford, engineer." "Already paid the entrance fee," I said. The governor banged his gavel again. "Order. Enough theatrics." He glanced at Soriel. "Her Grace will, of course, submit to medical verification under Titan jurisdiction." "Titan jurisdiction belongs to me," she cut in, tone polite but sharp. "Or do you wish to contest House Verit's sovereignty publicly?" The governor hesitated. His career did the math faster than his mouth could. "A temporary measure," he said quickly. We broke for intermission, the governor calling a recess for clarity. The crowd scattered into clusters of whispers. Cryodyne's lobbyists moved like sharks scenting fatigue. I followed Soriel into a side chamber that smelled of old metal and ozone. She leaned against the console, one hand pressed to the edge, eyes closed. "They've turned truth into currency," she said softly. "They always do," I said. "And they charge us for change." She laughed once, bitter and brief. Then the door hissed open. The governor slipped in, shutting it behind him. "Your Grace," he said, "you've made quite the spectacle. You and your engineer have the audience's sympathy, but sympathy doesn't pay for oxygen shipments. Cryodyne controls 90% of our imports." "What do you want, Governor?" she asked. "A solution that doesn't make me a martyr," he said frankly. and one that keeps you from being recalled. If you remove your associate from this picture, I can broker a neutral audit, stall the scandal, keep both our reputations intact. He turned to me. Cole, you'd have my gratitude. Chief of Operations, full salary, immunity from any inquiry. You'd live comfortably. It wasn't the first offer I'd had to trade conscience for comfort. And the workers on Titan? I asked. The ones she's trying to protect from Cryodyne's mining quotas? The governor's shrug was eloquent. Collateral policy. You can't fix everything. Soriel said nothing. I could feel her gaze, steady and unreadable. The governor left with a smile that promised nothing but plausible deniability. The silence that followed was heavy enough to have weight. You should take it, she said at last. I won't. You lost someone because of a bad decision by someone like him, she said quietly. You could make sure it never happens again from inside. I don't fix systems by becoming them, I said. You taught me that. Her eyes softened, then hardened again. House Verrett has recalled me, she admitted. They will strip my title if I don't sign Cryodyne's treaty. They prefer obedience over integrity. I stepped closer. And if you go back? I disappear into ceremony. They'll marry me off to someone thin and silent and call it atonement. Then don't go. Her laugh this time was low, exhausted. Spoken like a man with the luxury of exile. A moment stretched between us. Tension, gratitude, maybe something neither of us dared name. Then the ship's alarms broke it. A different tone this time, sharper, real. What now? I muttered, pulling up my wrist display. The readings spiked. Cryodyne shuttles powering up without authorization. The control room's access codes had been changed mid-hearing. Soriel straightened. They mean to seize the flagship. If they hold the command core, they hold Titan. Then we take it back, I said. She glanced at me, measuring. You're one man. And you're one queen, I said. Between us, that's at least one full revolution. Her eyes flashed with something fierce. Then we move. We left the side chamber through a maintenance hatch I'd installed months ago. A shortcut no one but engineering used. The corridor beyond pulsed with emergency lights. The distant rumble of engines climbing toward thrust. Crew members scattered, uncertain which orders to follow. I keyed into the intercom. Bridge personnel, reroute power to Deck 9 control core. Anyone not shooting or sabotaging, stay put. Soriel matched my pace despite the ceremonial robes. You give orders like a man who expects to be obeyed. I give them like someone who knows time pressure doesn't care about titles. She smiled, a real one, tight and determined. Then we agree. We reached the gantry leading to the control room. Through the observation glass, we could see Cryodyne's private security sealing the doors, data lines snaking into their suits. The Queen turned to me. They'll cut our feed, control the narrative, and declare an emergency transition of power. Unless we show the truth first, I said. If I can reach the auxiliary node, I can broadcast live to every colony feed. That will expose you, she said. They'll brand you saboteur. Already been called worse. Outside, Rel's voice boomed over the internal speakers. Her Grace is under medical duress. All non-Cryodyne personnel are to stand down immediately. His tone was honeyed, confident, already scripting his victory. Soriel looked toward the sealed control room door. He wants a queen to crown himself with. He's about to get one, I said, checking my tool belt. Just not the kind he expects. We moved, silent and sure. She drew herself upright, every inch of her body declaring authority. I felt the storm outside buffet the hull, Titan's methane rain striking like static. The ship groaned around us, alive, listening. In that sound I heard the same promise I'd made to Mara years ago. Never again let anyone die because silence was easier. This time I intended to keep it. The control room sat at the top of the flagship like the brain of a restless giant, its glass walls staring down over Titan's churning atmosphere. Lightning flickered below, orange and violet, reflecting off the glass and painting every surface with the storm's pulse. Inside, Cryodyne's private security moved with precision, sealing hatches, rerouting commands, setting up a live press relay for their own version of events. They thought the Queen was contained. They thought I was a distraction. They hadn't met us working together. We reached the final hatch through a maintenance conduit narrow enough that my shoulders scraped metal. Soriel followed, robes tied up for movement, her breath steady despite the climb. "How many?" she whispered. "6, I said, checking my display. 3 techs, 2 guards, 1 executive. Rel himself. "Good," she murmured, like someone saying grace before a meal. "I prefer problems with names." The final bulkhead's control panel glowed faintly red. Locked, corporate encryption, Cryodyne's signature. Slick, efficient, fragile once you understood its vanity. 60 seconds of darkness, I told her, while I reboot the grid. What happens during those 60 seconds? We find out if their courage depends on the lights. She nodded once. "Do it." I pulled 2 wires, rerouted the charge, and killed the power. The corridor plunged into total blackness. The only sound was the ship breathing, the low hum of its heart. "Now," I said. Soriel moved first, her silhouette brushing past like a tide. The door's emergency override responded to her royal authorization code. One of the last Cryodyne hadn't scrubbed yet. The hatch slid open with a hiss of decompressed air. Inside, the command deck glowed with standby lights, enough to outline Rel standing before the panoramic window, his face a portrait of self-satisfaction. "Her Grace," he said, turning. "You're unwell. Please sit. This transition can still be graceful if you cooperate." Soriel walked toward him, deliberate and calm. "You misunderstand me, Executive Rel. I don't transition, I govern." He raised a hand. 2 guards moved to intercept her. I stepped out of the shadow, grabbing the first by the collar, yanking him into the dark. The struggle was fast, close, human. My elbow against his helmet, a grunt, the clang of his rifle hitting the deck. The second swung a baton. I ducked under it, caught his wrist, and twisted. He dropped. Both would wake up sore, not dead. That mattered to me more than it should have. Rel's composure faltered. "You think this changes anything? The broadcast is mine. I control the narrative. The galaxy already believes you compromised." "Then let them see compromise succeed," Soriel said. She gestured toward me. "Chief." I reconnected the power. The room blinked back to life, every console reawakening. I patched into the main feed and redirected the data streams. Rel's face, frozen mid-sneer, appeared across every public screen in the chamber. His orders, his forged directives, every corrupt relay tied to Cryodyne's server. The crowd outside could see it all. He lunged toward me. I sidestepped, caught his jacket, and slammed him against the console. Not hard enough to break, just enough to remind him the universe contained friction. "You like broadcasting?" I said. "Say hello to Titan." Soriel stepped forward into the camera's frame. The chamber lights haloed her in amber and silver. "People of Titan," she began, voice low but steady. "You are being told this ship is in danger. It is not. You are being told your queen is unwell. I am not. What you are not being told is who profits from your fear." Her words flowed like heat through frozen air. I'd never seen authority used without arrogance until that moment. Cryodyne has sabotaged this flagship, risking thousands of lives, to seize Titan's mining charter. They would trade your breath for dividends. We will not. She turned to me, extending a hand. "Chief Cole, show them the proof." I projected the final log, every command line, every cross-link directive that tied Cryodyne's sabotage directly to Rel's authorization. The chamber murmured as the truth scrolled in glowing text for all to see. "The evidence is yours," I said. "Unaltered, transparent. Check it yourself." Outside the chamber, technicians and workers crowded the observation deck, watching the feed. The governor's voice crackled over comms, strained but audible. "Her Grace, what are you doing?" "Governing," she said simply. "Join me, or explain why you won't." Rel tried one last play. "You've doomed yourself, Queen. Verret will disown you for this. Soriel looked out at the storm. Then they'll learn what disowning competence costs. She turned back to the camera. Effective immediately, House Verret's authority over Titan is suspended under the clause of crisis sovereignty. Titan belongs to those who keep it breathing. The chamber erupted, some in outrage, more in awe. The governor hesitated just long enough to see which way the wind was blowing. Cryodyne is hereby suspended pending inquiry, he declared. A politician's pivot so smooth it could have been choreography. Public oversight begins immediately. Security entered, weapons lowered this time, not for her but for Rel. He shouted something about rights and contracts as they dragged him away. I shut down the broadcast with one final line of code and felt the quiet settle like a returning heartbeat. Soriel turned toward me. You realize what we've done? Bought ourselves a lifetime of paperwork, I said. She almost smiled. And perhaps a few years of freedom. Maybe even air that isn't rented. Her laughter this time was real, rich, unguarded. The kind of sound you don't expect in a control room after a coup. I leaned against the console, finally letting the exhaustion hit. You should sit, I said. I'll sit when Titan's stable, she replied. Not before. We spent the next hour rebalancing systems, rerouting power, recalibrating oxygen flow, resetting the ship's navigation lockouts. The work was grounding. Every task simple, tangible, undoing the chaos line by line. Soriel moved through the room with a mechanic's precision, issuing orders, thanking crew members by name. They followed her not because of title, but because she saw them. At one point, she passed by me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. You could have taken his offer, she said quietly. A comfortable post, no danger. I don't build comfort, I said. I build things that last. You think this will? I think it already has. She looked at me then, really looked. Elias, if the catalyst holds, there will be a child. A hybrid neither House Verret nor your Earth Councils will accept. I met her gaze. Then we build a place that will. For a heartbeat, the storm outside seemed to pause, the lightning fading into a soft, diffuse glow that touched her face. You speak as if it's simple. It's not, I said. But it's possible. That earned a small, weary laugh. You're an optimist disguised as a cynic. Occupational hazard. The comm pinged, a message from the governor's office confirming Titan's provisional autonomy and promising an independent investigation. A fragile truce, but a truce nonetheless. The crisis was over. Soriel exhaled, shoulders lowering for the first time since I'd met her. We'll need a new charter, she said. A government that includes the miners, the medics, the engineers. Not the executives? They can apply, she said, if they're willing to earn their place. I grinned. That'll be a first. She walked to the viewport watching the storm ease. You should rest, Chief. You've earned it. Not until the logs are secure. They're already safer than we are. She was right. Still, I stayed at the console, saving every byte of data that proved the truth. When I finally turned, she was staring at the planet below, the reflection of Titan's light making her look like something forged from its surface. Solid, luminous, alive. She said without turning, when they tell this story, they'll call it rebellion. They can call it maintenance, I said. We fixed what was broken. She smiled, a slow curve of understanding. And what are we now, Elias Cole? Partners, I said, surprising myself with how easily it came out. In governance. An unorthodox title. Fitting, though. The storm cracked one final flash outside, then drifted into quiet. We stood there, watching, until the noise of the crew below replaced the sound of fear. Orders being followed, repairs being made, laughter creeping back into the hallways. Life returning. Soriel rested a hand on the console, steadying herself. If House Verret demands my return, you'll refuse. If they threaten you, I'll reroute the comms, I said. Let them talk to static. She laughed again, softer now, and turned back toward the view. You realize this partnership of ours has made enemies in 3 governments. Then it's working. Arrogant man. Honest queen. Silence stretched between us. Not empty, just full of everything neither of us needed to say. The ship hummed beneath our feet, the sound of a system running clean for the first time in days. It was beautiful in the way only stability after chaos can be. Somewhere far below, on Titan's surface, miners would be breathing air that wasn't filtered through debt. Children would be sleeping under dome lights that stayed on because we'd made sure of it. The scandal would fade. The treaty would hold or it wouldn't. But the fact that we'd proved competence and decency still counted felt like enough. The queen turned from the window, the faintest smile ghosting her lips. You never asked permission to stay. I don't ask for what's already mine to maintain, I said. Her eyes softened. And what exactly is that, Chief? I looked past her to the endless stormlight beyond the glass. A future worth patching up. She didn't answer in words. Instead, she laid one hand, steady, warm, on the back of mine where it rested on the console. We stood like that, neither speaking nor moving, while the great ship steadied itself above Titan's glowing clouds. Outside, the storm broke apart into silence, and the first rays of sunlight, thin, filtered, fragile, cut through the haze like a promise waiting to be kept.